It's an astounding move, and one that has quite rightly pissed off pretty much everybody that isn't a sneeringly cynical Warner Brothers executive or an alt-right fake nerd that gets all angy-wangy at anything not explicitly catering to their cishet sensibilities.
You really had to add that in there, did you, Rufus? I mean, seriously, you had to just put that in there just so you control people, did you? Hello people of the internet, this is the Geek Gaming Culture channel, and again, Jim, Stephanie, Rufus' son, daughter, Sterling, has decided to run with the anyone who disagrees with me is an alt-right noob narrative. Well, Rufus got one thing correct, they should cancel The Flash because of Ezra Miller being an absolute piece of garbage. But Rufus doesn't reveal why Warner Brothers doesn't want to do anything to him. Guess what Ezra claims to be? Same that Jim is right now, transitioning. But once more, Rufus, and by the way, check a previous video I did about Jim to know why I'm calling this person Rufus, has decided to do the one thing people don't want them doing, to add in the swipe at a target that Rufus believes did something the individual thinks was a bad thing. The clip I played at the beginning, why did Rufus add that? At what point was that deemed necessary for the person to decide that the narrative of only alt-right people wanted the Snyder Cut released was the way to go? Because the only people that even cared that WB was finally giving the fans of the film what they wanted was the crap-lib people in the gaming media landscape person is now fully a part of. They were angry that it was the normies that they were giving into, and not those that they thought the corporation should be giving into. Those that gave them the advertising space. You know what else they thought they were giving into? Their competitors, the so-called YouTube scene. Why do I know this? Because Rufus decided to say this too.
But look at me being overly political again! Not like the true centrists of the internet currently gloating that Batgirl was cancelled because it was woke.
What, like the people who said the DCEU was right now all over the place? The very same people that also wanted the Flash nuked because of the many Ezra Miller scandals? Those people, Rufus? Because I assure you that if you didn't try to label them alongside a garbage tier that you keep doing, then you'd be quite shocked at the people who would have been on your side. But nope, you still insist that the only reason anyone left your channel is because of your transition, and not because you continue to talk about the exact same thing time and time again and talk down to the people who are in your audience, and not realizing you're preaching to the choir most of the time, and then cut off your nose despite your face when you make these claims. You see, Rufus, this is your main flaw. You don't seem to realize that there are more than two sides to some of these issues. Yes, the fringes exist, and yes, they are called out. Do you really think that it's just alt-right snobs that wanted the Snyder Cut released? Ask yourself, why did any of those media outlets care if WB gave them that or not? Please, inform me what that battle was all about in the beginning. Perhaps it's because they didn't cater to you and those in the mob within Kotaku and Polygon and RPS, and listen to those people from places like Clownfish or Review Tech USA or The Quartering or Melanie Mac or myself. Please, inform me what was so alt-right about the Snyder Cut in the first place. That was something you people just made up without any basis in reality, much less a basis in fact. All you were ever mad about was that they were catering to those that they left you for. Channels that would not just assume that those that have even the slight disagreement with them or their friends in the media were fascists or trolls or basement dwellers, or won't suddenly equate them to those that spout the fringe nonsense like you think they do. That's why they leave, Rufus. Not that you preach to the choir, but then say that you're the only one that's preaching in tune and the rest of said choir is somehow out of tune. By now, you probably know what Rufus was talking about with his Jimquisition, or should I call it Rufusquisition. The way the new WB Discovery CEO David Zaslav nuked several projects, most notably the Batgirl movie. Now, those that have actually done the research, and those that would actually fact check Rufus the way I am, and unfortunately for Rufus, I exist, will know why this is even going on. For the better part of the last decade, while Marvel was churning out hit after hit in Phase 3 of the MCU, and jury is out on the onslaught of media in Phase 4 that we somehow are expected to keep up with to understand it all, the DCEU is in more of a mixed bag and all over the place. While some of the material was not bad, I didn't mind the original JL movie, and despite Rufus and the media constantly dunking on the Joker movie, now movies, plural with an S at the end, the Joker movie that has came out is probably one of the best comic book movies of all time. Some others were a hot mess, such as Wonder Woman 84. The first Wonder Woman was good, but the second can go to a deep, dark, hot place. In order to get control of the situation, Zaslav seems to want to reboot the DCEU and put a Kevin Feige type figure at the helm to get some continuity going. Counter reason to what Rufus and company were claiming, that test audiences hated Batgirl. In test screenings, according to Hollywood insider Matthew Belloni on his The Town podcast, he stated that the recommendation as to whether WB should go forth with a theatrical release was absolutely not.
It's funny, I actually often will get emails from readers, and last night I got one with the subject line, "I've seen Batgirl." So obviously I clicked on that, and this is someone who was in the test screening a couple months ago where they were trying to figure out what to do with this movie. And I called him and we chatted, and he, he's a real person. And he said that after the screening, the executives, Walter Hamada of DC and some of the others there, asked the audience, did this feel big? And clearly they were trying to figure out whether it felt like it deserved a theatrical release. And the consensus was absolutely not. He said it played like a TV pilot. The stakes were very small. It's set in the universe after the upcoming Flash movie, which is sort of a reset of the DC universe. And Michael Keaton's in it because he's in Flash as Batman. And it's also weirdly a Christmas movie. For some reason, so this movie wouldn't likely have come out until the holidays next year. He said it felt a little like Dark Phoenix, which was that X-Men movie that got completely buried in the early days of the pandemic.
Remember that distribution costs and the cost of having to get theaters to want to show something and take their time and labor to put something on their screens that no one will want to see has to play a role. And I doubt Belloni has any financial interest one way or another, so there's nothing they're suspecting that there could be any shoddy reporting there. Not to mention that WB has stated that they still want those that were playing those roles in that movie to continue to play them in future projects, giving the indication that it was only the production itself that they were squeamish about, which, in turn, shoots down Rufus's claim that it was all because of the big bad males that the person claims was the reason behind that decision. Not to mention the decision behind the removal of Ann Sarnoff, which the person cites a Bloomberg article by Lucas Shaw. Rufus can't even be bothered to show us the byline who wrote the article that is, by the way, behind a damn paywall, so you have to pay to get the right to fact check it. Don't worry, I will give you the archive version down below so you can bypass that. Oh, and she wasn't fired. The exit was one of many prior to the merger, and Zaslav was not at the post at the time that the position itself was eliminated, not just her, thereby a displacement effect. She reported to the former CEO, Jason Kilar, who I have seen being the polarizing figure that was the first person to come up with the day one release of films of both streaming service and theaters at the same time. Oh, and remember that Ann Sarnoff was a main decision maker of the firing of a certain actor from Fantastic Beasts Dumbledore's Secrets. Guess what Rufus never mentions? Somebody with the same initials that I have, JD. Want to take another guess as to why Rufus will not want to say that slice of information? Or that those very same people who the person says want Batgirl canceled for wokeness would have rather seen not only The Flash gone, but also Aquaman 2 redone or canned to address another issue? An issue that has crapped bed and stepped on bees in recent days, if you know what I mean. But Rufus is more than willing to blame you, person watching, and somehow at the same time bring up multiverses for some reason and say that some matchups and characters in the game are inappropriate. That Rufus-quisition last week was kind of a mess and didn't make any sense into what the person's complaint even was outside of a Game of Thrones character being included, and it was a lame reason to boot as to what the complaint was there. Because if Rufus was really honest with all of you, person would have actually come clean that if it weren't for the constant labeling, and there would be more people that would listen to the person. Instead, can't be bothered to admit that sometimes those Rufus condemns were actually correct. Not to mention that you can be progressive and be forward thinking and at the same time also be in a frame of mind that sometimes corporations do try to pander. That's with that diversity meter Activision Blizzard pulled, as well as whatever that campaign M&M is doing right now even is supposed to be. We are still allowed as progressives to call out when corporations don't have any real idea of how to apply diversity and inclusion into their projects in ways that further strengthens the standing of those minority groups in media, in front of and behind the scenes. Instead, we get shoehorned in characters and ideas that serve nothing more than a quick payday from those corporations Rufus complains about so much. It's not likely that they want to see these projects tank, so they have an excuse to not make projects with diverse casts anymore. They are far from coordinated enough to pull something that elaborate off. Instead, they want to be able to put everyone into the same box with the same label when enough people realize that you can't expect people to just buy something just because you check the marks, as people who are calling out the recent Tomb Raider news are telling us, so they can have a scapegoat for why something fails while being able to keep the gravy train going and continue to trick all of you into thinking they are on your side about diversity and inclusion. There needs to be a showing that the characters are relatable and resonate well with the rest of the cast of characters in the stories that are presented. Only then do you get progress. Not when you just want a payday, but when you show that everyone is able to work together, and show that there are also many white males out there who are very much allies and can work together and see a person of color or non-binary or anything in between as just a normal person. Showing that all of them can't wait to get away from minority people is just as bigoted, and makes it harder for all of us to be able to weed out those who are actually bigoted on the daily, regardless of their social status or identity, so we can have a sense of unity, which is what corporations fear most. White males and females being united with minorities and everybody else come back to elitists and well-to-do, which, as exemplified daily, but not only those who call out the shots in many of these corporations, also those that have allowed those same corporations to run the ships the way they do. And yes, Washington DC and Parliament and those people in media who get paid by them to flat out lie to us about anything and everything, I'm looking at you. Elitism treats everyone in the same wealth class equally, but I can't see Rufus realizing that anytime soon. After all, person is now a part of that elitism, only in a different section, the media elite that is trying to tell us that their crap in the bed doesn't stink. Those very same people who have rightfully called out recent Supreme Court decisions, but will never bring up that the party in power had a month head start to do something about it and never lifted a finger. Or will try to condemn a recent TwitchCon decision about health and safety when they won't do their research of how little the measures they wanted have helped anyone and only were used as a virtue signal. Not to mention of no one ever being restricted from being able to take those measures on their own accord at the event. The media club Rufus is now a part of is just as much of a contributor to that filthy elitism that the person claims to rail against. No wonder Rufus continues to rail on the right-wing YouTube scene the person says does constant takedowns on the videos on that channel, and tries to continue to say they are the only ones that would counter the rhetoric said on said channel. Funny thing is, if you think I'm right-wing Rufus, then you know nothing about me. Maybe you should perhaps start being honest. Stop thinking that your transition had anything to do with why people leave your channel. Stop taunting people when they say your videos have become too political. You have to know what they're actually meaning by that. They mean you've gotten too militant and too ready to toss labels around when you know nothing about the labels you use. Realize you're educated beyond your intelligence here, and realize that most would be on your side if it wasn't for the militant way you're coming across. Stop attacking, misleading, and lying to your audience. And tell us why your friends end up watching that Snyder cut. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to think that only the imaginary alt-right trolls were the ones that wanted to watch that. Silly me. I forgot that progressive thinking people were not allowed to want anything like that or call out anyone who would think they were doing the right thing when they were doing it for all the wrong reasons. I guess it is a huge club I wasn't invited to. I'll just go back to the club that will actually care about progressive minorities and will want actual unity against corporate elitism, and won't auto-label me or talk down to me when I ask for it or call them out when they do the right thing in all the wrong ways. This is a Geek Gaming Culture channel. That just happened.